Okay. A first-person shooter that begins with a 5-minute train ride. Bold choice, Valve. Before Half-Life, most shooters felt like levels, rooms, keys, enemies, exit doors. You entered a map, cleared it out, and moved on. Then Half-Life opened with a train ride. No shooting, no explosions, no giant demons screaming in your face, just a scientist, a tram, and the slowest commute in video game history. Basically, Valve opened a shooter with public transport. Bold move. And somehow, it changed everything. In 1998, Valve released its first game, a game made by a new studio founded by former Microsoft employees, a game that publishers thought was too ambitious, a game built on the bones of Quake, then mutated into something far stranger. It was called Half-Life. But before Gordon Freeman became the silent icon of PC gaming, he almost looked like a completely different person. Meet Ivan the Space Biker, an early version of Half-Life's main character. Big beard, bulky suit, no iconic glasses, more lost trucker at a science convention than world-saving theoretical physicist. Not exactly the face of quiet scientific trauma. Somewhere in another timeline, this guy is beating headcrabs with a tire iron and asking where he parked. Eventually, Valve moved away from Ivan and toward Gordon Freeman, a more ordinary, silent scientist. And that decision mattered, because Half-Life was not about playing a superhero, it was about being trapped inside a disaster you barely understood. But the character wasn't the only thing Valve had to rebuild. The entire game nearly missed the mark. Half-Life was originally planned for 1997, but the team looked at what they had and realized something terrifying. It wasn't good enough. Which is the kind of sentence that makes every developer in the room suddenly discover religion. The levels existed, the technology existed, the monsters existed, but the game did not feel like Half-Life yet. It felt like pieces, fragments, a collection of ideas that had not become a world. So Valve did the thing every studio fears. They delayed it. They reworked it. They rebuilt the experience into something cohesive. Gabe Newell later summarized that philosophy with a line that still hurts because it is true. Late is temporary, suck is forever. A brutal sentence, but honestly, the entire games industry should have it printed above the coffee machine. And for a young studio trying to prove it belonged in the industry, that was not just a design decision, that was survival. Under the hood, Half-Life was running on what would later be known as GoldSrc. And GoldSrc was not born from nothing. It began as a heavily modified version of id Software's Quake technology. So yes, in a very cursed family tree, Gordon Freeman is technically related to a shambler. Which is perfect, honestly, because after Quake proved shooters could exist in true 3D, Half-Life asked a different question. What if that 3D space could tell a story? Valve did not simply reskin Quake. They rebuilt huge parts of the technology. They added stronger animation systems, better scripted sequences, more expressive characters, more reactive AI. A world that could talk, break, explode, and surprise you without stopping the game. Half-Life was not trying to be the fastest shooter, it was trying to make the player believe. And that is why the tram ride matters. It sounds ridiculous. A first-person shooter begins with several minutes of commuting to work. No combat, no score, no arena, no press start to kill everything. Just Black Mesa. Scientists walking around, security guards doing their jobs, machines humming, announcements echoing through sterile corridors. It is not there because it is exciting. It is there because it teaches you that this place existed before you arrived. And when everything goes wrong, you remember what it looked like when it was still alive. Then the experiment begins. The test chamber activates, the sample goes in, the machines scream, reality cracks open, and suddenly the shooter does not begin with a level. It begins with a workplace becoming a nightmare. This is where Half-Life broke the old rhythm. It did not tell you the story from the outside, it locked you inside it. No traditional cutscenes pulling you away, no hero monologues, no floating narrator explaining the plot. You stayed behind Gordon's eyes. You saw what he saw. You survived what he survived. That sounds normal now. In 1998, it was not. Most shooters still treated story like decoration. Half-Life made the environment carry the narrative. A dead scientist in a hallway, a broken door, a distant scream, a soldier executing a witness, a vent leading somewhere you probably should not crawl. The game was constantly telling you things without stopping to explain them, which is very polite considering everything else in Black Mesa was trying to kill you. And then there were the enemies. The aliens were strange, but the soldiers were the real shock. The HECU Marines did not just run forward like target practice. They flanked, they threw grenades, they used cover, they communicated. They made the player feel hunted by a squad, not attacked by a shooting gallery. For once, the soldiers didn't feel like they were politely waiting in line to be shot. Were they perfect? Absolutely not. This was 1998, but they felt smart enough to make you nervous, and that was the magic. Half-Life did not need the illusion to be perfect. It only needed the player to believe it for a few seconds at a time. A Marine throws a grenade into your hiding spot. A scientist begs you not to leave him. A creature breaks through a ceiling panel. A security guard opens a locked door and suddenly feels like a real person. Tiny moments, tiny systems, one continuous nightmare. And even the name Half-Life had a strange origin path. Before the final title, the project carried the codename Quiver, a reference connected to Arrowhead from Stephen King's The Mist. And honestly, that makes perfect sense. A secret facility, a science experiment, a rupture in reality, creatures pouring in from somewhere they absolutely should not be. Half-Life was not just borrowing from shooters, it was borrowing from horror, from disaster fiction, from that very specific fear that the smartest people in the room have opened the wrong door, and then lost the handle. The result was a shooter that felt different from the moment it started. You were not clearing arenas, you were escaping a place. Black Mesa became the star, the tram ride, the test chamber, the offices, the labs, the vents, the surface, the military cleanup, the alien world beyond. And then Zen happened, because apparently Black Mesa wasn't already having a bad enough day. Every chapter felt connected by the same disaster. That is why Half-Life mattered. Not because it invented every piece, it did not. Not because it had the cleanest shooting, it did not. Half-Life mattered because it fused those pieces into one continuous experience. Technology, pacing, environmental storytelling, scripted sequences, AI, sound, silence. A shooter where the world did not wait for you to press next level, it collapsed around you. And when you look back now, it is easy to forget how risky that was. Valve could have shipped a competent Quake-like shooter, a few monsters, some corridors, some weapons. Maybe it would have done fine. Instead, they delayed the game, rebuilt the experience, killed the parts that did not work, and turned a debut project into one of the most influential PC games ever made. All because somebody had the audacity to say, what if we start our shooter with a train ride? And somehow, that worked. Half-Life became the bridge between the pure speed of Quake and the cinematic worlds that followed. Without Half-Life, the road to modern story-driven shooters looks completely different. No BioShock in the same way, no immersive Black Mesa-style openings, no endless developers trying to make the player feel like they are inside the disaster, not watching it from a distance. And of course, no Counter-Strike as we know it. Because the same mutated Quake technology that powered Half-Life also became the foundation for one of the biggest multiplayer phenomena in gaming history. Half-Life did not just change shooters, it changed what players expected from them. It proved that an FPS could be fast without being mindless, scripted without feeling like a movie, linear without feeling dead, and silent without feeling empty. Before Half-Life, a shooter could be a map. After Half-Life, it had to be a world. And before we go, huge thanks for all the feedback on the Diablo and Quake videos. I read the comments and I'm taking them seriously. We're tuning the formula with more real gameplay, more source material, and more careful visual reconstruction, because these games deserve to feel authentic to the era we grew up with. If that sounds like your kind of rabbit hole, stick around. If you ever survived Black Mesa with 1 health point, no ammo, and the confidence of a man who absolutely should have saved 5 minutes ago, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. Stay retro.